Hey there, fellow ChessGoons. My name is Anthony Arena. I am a 2000 rated chess expert from Long Island, New York. And today we're going to go over the 5 most aggressive openings that you should definitely learn. We're going to go in order from least aggressive to most aggressive, with the last and most aggressive opening being my personal favorite. Let's get right into it. First opening we're going to go over is called the Evans Gambit. It starts off after e4, e5. We play knight f3, attacking the pawn. He's going to defend, and then bishop c4. This is called the Italian game, where we're attacking the f7 square with this bishop, and maybe the knight gets involved at some point too. But where we differ is the bishop to c5 variation, the Guccio piano. Also one of the most famous variations in all of chess. Many times you will castle, your opponent will develop the knight in castle, and it's going to be a very systematic game many people memorize. If you really want to throw your opponent off, go ahead and play b4, and this is the Evans Gambit. The whole idea is simple. If the bishop or the knight take back, we are going to play c3, we're going to put our bishop on a3, and the whole idea is to keep our opponent from castling and attack the kingside as fast as possible with these doubled bishops. The most popular line is bishop takes, c3, and then bishop to a5. And in this situation, go ahead and sacrifice another pawn with d4. Yes, e takes d, we castle, and then once again, pawn takes. In this situation, we are down 3 pawns, but we will immediately win this pawn back with queen to b3 because we are attacking f7 and we are also attacking c3. He cannot defend both. You'll end up seeing queen e7 more often than not, just defending the f7 square. And we'll go ahead and take this pawn back. We're immediately threatening knight to d5, attacking the queen. So bishop takes back makes a lot of sense. Queen takes bishop, and now we're attacking g7. Our opponent will most likely look to do 2 things at once, develop and protect with knight to f6. And then we have bishop a3. This is the prime idea behind the Evans Gambit. It stops our opponent from castling, and it also attacks the queen. This basically forces d6. And in this situation, we have this e4 pawn where we can push. Keep in mind the queen can never take back this e4 pawn because the rook just slides over and the queen is pinned to the king and trapped. So we push the pawn to e5 here. Notice that this pawn can be taken in 3 different ways, but all 3 ways are losing. If queen takes pawn, knight takes queen, and he's just lost the queen. If pawn takes pawn, then bishop takes queen because we have this pin. And of course, if knight takes back, queen takes, and same idea from earlier, rook e1, pinning the queen to the king. So we know that all 3 of these takes are losing, so the knight's going to end up retreating, pawn is going to take back, attacking the queen, the rooks will come out to the open e-file, attacking the king, and we have such an amazing attack here. This is so much fun to play, and you're going to end up destroying your opponent. The next aggressive opening we're going to tackle is called the Kings Gambit of e4, e5, and then f4. The pawn takes back, and then we play knight to f3, looking to avoid this queen h4 check, keeping our king stuck in the middle of the board. From here, our idea is very simple. We're going to play bishop c4, and we're going to line up as many attackers as possible on f7. We're going to attack quickly and swiftly, and we will sacrifice the knight and even the bishop in order to achieve a quick checkmate. Our opponent here might play g5, the most popular variation. Go ahead and play bishop c4. Like I said, guys, after g4, we're not afraid to lose this knight. We'll go ahead and just castle. Take the knight. I don't care. Because queen takes f3, and we now have 3 attackers eyeing down this pawn. Let's say queen to e7, looking to protect the f7 square. Completely fine with us. We're just going to play d4, and now we're attacking the f4 square with even more threats. This is very scary. And notice here, if our opponent goes knight c6, looking to attack d4 and attack the queen, we just go ahead and take queen f4, and if the knight continues with this attack, thinking, okay, I can take on c2, well, at this point, you're just completely lost. Bishop takes, and the king's going to run out of squares very quickly, and this is a disaster for black. Aggressive opening number 3, the Scotch Gambit. Once again, e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and this time, instead of bringing the bishop out to c4, we are going to play d4. Pawn takes back, and a very popular line people memorize is knight takes on d4. However, we're not going for this line. We're going for the Scotch Gambit, bishop c4. Similar idea to the Italian, where we're attacking f7. Once again, we will look to get our bishop onto either b2 or a3, and we're going to just laser down our opponent's kingside. We may sacrifice a minor piece or 2, and we're going to go for a quick checkmate. If our opponent plays knight f6, we can go ahead and push e5, and this position gets very, very tricky. if knight to e4, go ahead and sacrifice another pawn. And if he does decide to take, this pawn is completely poisoned because of queen d5, attacking this f7 square, which is completely vulnerable. Notice you cannot save the knight and the mate, so let's say queen to e7, trying to protect that square. We just play queen takes knight, and notice that if the pawn takes here, we have bishop b2, and this is a completely crushing position. We have much better development. Our bishops are out in the open, and we are just up a minor piece, so this should be an easy win for you. Aggressive position number 4, the Smith Mora Gambit. So we're going to go e4, and our opponent will play c5. This is called the Sicilian defense, and it's not a very beginner-friendly line. It's very technical. There's a lot of theory and a lot of memorization, and I feel the best way to go ahead and attack this aggressively is to sacrifice the pawn on d4. Pawn takes back, and then we go ahead and play c3, saying, do you want a second pawn? Our opponent accepts this gambit because he is not a ChessGoon subscriber, and then knight to c3, taking that pawn back. We have much better development now than our opponent, who has all his pieces back home at the cost of simply one pawn. Let's say the knight comes out to f6. He's attacking the e4 pawn, but luckily we're defending it already. Simply knight to f3, the second knight comes out, and the crucial position is met after bishop to c4. The idea is simple. We're going to launch an attack on the f7 square, maybe knight to g5. Our bishop will eventually go on g5 as well to possibly pin the knight, and if possible, we're going to open up the e-file. In my opinion, the best defense to this is simply just e6, blocking off the bishop from attacking. And now we're going to go for our second idea, which is opening up the e-file. And we're going to do this by just castling. And if our opponent plays a6, preparing b5, trying to chase the bishop away, we pin. And then b5 is played. Bishop backs up. And in this situation, we have bishop to c5, a very popular line where he's going to try to pin the f2 pawn. But here we can punish with a very sneaky knight to d5. Knight to d5 is not easy to take care of. For example, if the knight takes back, bishop takes queen. If you take with the pawn, then e takes d, attacking the knight. There are really no good squares for this knight to go to, so he's going to retreat to either like a7 or even b8. And when that happens, we're going to slide the rook out to e1, attacking this open file. If the bishop jumps in front, we have d6, and our opponent is lost on the spot. So that's pretty easy. Let's say he blocks with the queen, then rook just takes queen. If the king moves over, we're going to go ahead and push d6. If bishop takes, queen takes check. Queen can't block because the rook is there and the queen is attacking. King can't go to e8 either because the rook is blocking the e-file. King must move over, and then rook to e7. And notice that there's a double attack on f7 and there's no way to defend. And finally, guys, the world's most aggressive opening, and my personal favorite, the bird's opening, f4. It's not traditional. We're not taking the center with d4 or e4, but we are exerting some control over e5. Our opponent could play e5, but this is a whole different counter gambit. Normally, you'll see d5 exerting control over c4 and e4. And here we play knight to f3, trying to exert control over these dark squares, which is a big weakness of the bird's opening. c5 is played, and here we're going to play e3. We're going to look to try to pin this knight on c6 right away. We have no problem trading it off. Most likely bishop to d7, stopping the doubling up of the pawns. We're going to castle as quickly as possible. a6, and be careful if you back up to a4, pawn down, trapped, and we've lost our bishop. So don't do that. So just take. And yes, he's going to get his bishop on c6, which is a very strong diagonal, but this bishop doesn't become as dominant as you would think, and we play b3. And you can see our main idea of the bird's opening. We're going to put our knight on e5, our bishop on b2. We're going to possibly either A, lift the rook and attack the king this way, or we're going to move our queen over to e1 and try to go for a checkmate like this. Here our opponent develops the knight, we play bishop to b2, and then normal development idea e6. The bishop's going to come out to d6. Here we go ahead and play d3, preparing knight to d2. The queen goes to c7, looking to possibly get a push on the c-file, and then knight d2. Notice that if the bishop comes to d6, we have no problem playing knight to e5, and if the bishop takes back, and now we're eyeing down the queen. If our opponent decides to castle here, he's actually already lost, and this really shows just how dangerous the bird's opening can be. Knight takes bishop, queen takes back, and then bishop f6, taking the knight, pawn takes, and then queen h5. Notice in this situation, we are going to threaten this rook lift on f3, and then either g3 or rook h3, and we're going to threaten a dangerous mate. Eventually, our knight will get involved with f3 and then possibly h4, and you can see that our opponent will be in very bad shape here, and this should be a pretty easy win. Let me know in the comment section which of these openings are your favorite, and which openings you use right now. If you like this video, you're definitely going to enjoy the next video on my personal favorite opening, the Queen's Gambit. Stay classy, my friends. Until next time.